Lord, what is happening? What are you doing right now? There comes a moment in every person's life when God moves in a way so abrupt, so unsettling, and so far beyond our expectations that even the strongest, most faithful hearts freeze mid-step. Time seems to pause, the noise fades, and all we can whisper with trembling clarity is, Lord, what are you doing? There is a moment, quiet, unannounced, and deeply unsettling, when God interrupts your life in a way that leaves you breathless, not because everything collapses at once, but because something you never expected suddenly ends. It is the moment when even the most spiritually grounded among us stop moving, stop reasoning, and whisper, Lord, what are you doing? For many of you, that moment did not come when God exposed the narcissist. It did not come when lies were uncovered. It did not even come when manipulation finally became undeniable. No, the moment that shook you to your core came when God said something far more unsettling. I am removing you, not them. You, your presence, God revealed, had become judgment. This is a truth few believers understand until they live it. We grow up expecting God's discipline to look dramatic, lightning, public exposure, collapse. But sometimes the most severe correction God delivers to a hardened heart is not destruction, it is subtraction. God does not punish the narcissist by striking them. He disciplines them by withdrawing what they never deserved to keep. When God removes you, it is not because you failed, it is because you fulfilled your assignment. There are people who will never change while grace remains convenient. They mistake mercy for permission. They assume patience means permanence. They believe kindness guarantees access. And so God does the one thing they never expected. He takes away the one person they thought would always stay. At first, they do not understand what has happened. They only feel the absence, the silence, the sudden collapse of emotional support they relied on but never honored. They feel the void long before they recognize the reason behind it. They lost more than a person. They lost a divine placement. And that loss becomes the doorway to every lesson that follows. Because now the question shifts from why God removed you to why God sent you in the first place. God did not place you in their life by accident. You were never there to fix them. You were never there to endure abuse indefinitely. You were never there to be consumed. You were sent as contrast. God placed you in their world because you carried what they lacked and resisted cultivating. You carried steadiness they could not fake, integrity they could not sustain, a moral center they could not manipulate without consequence. You brought light into a system built on distortion. You brought sincerity into a heart trained to exploit. You brought truth into a reality they survived by bending. And because they were unprepared to confront what you reflected, they mishandled you from the very beginning. You became a mirror they did not want but desperately needed. Your patience exposed their impulsiveness. Your kindness revealed their cruelty. Your forgiveness uncovered their entitlement. Your consistency highlighted their instability. Every time you chose grace, it disrupted their control. Every time you sought peace, it exposed their chaos. Every time you remained grounded, it confronted the emptiness they worked tirelessly to avoid. They were not simply annoyed by you. They were convicted by you. And here is what most people never realize until it is over. You were not their first invitation to change. You were their final one. Before you arrived, they had already dismissed warnings, burned bridges, silenced conscience, rejected accountability. So God sent someone they could not easily discredit, someone gentle, sincere, faithful, and morally grounded, someone whose character could not be twisted into justification. God knew they would try to exploit your goodness, but He also knew your goodness would expose them. That is why your presence felt threatening. That is why they pulled you close and pushed you away. That is why they studied you, not to admire you, but to figure out how to break what they could not control. They sensed something divine in the way you moved, something incompatible with the illusion they built their life upon. And still your assignment remained unchanged. You were there to reveal, to reflect, to confront without accusation, to awaken without force. And when that purpose was fulfilled, when heaven determined that your presence had done everything it was meant to do, God began preparing your exit. That is when the games intensified. Narcissists live with a dangerous confidence. They believe their deception is too subtle to detect, their manipulation too refined to uncover. They mistake kindness for naivety, patience for ignorance. compassion for weakness. They did not realize that some of the softest hearts carry the strongest discernment. They curated confusion on purpose, offered affection selectively, apologized without repentance, promised without intention. Every move was calculated to keep you emotionally tethered while never fully secure. They believed you would never see the pattern, but they misjudged what God was doing inside you. The shift began quietly. You stopped explaining yourself, stopped absorbing misplaced blame, stopped rescuing them from consequences, and then God turned on the light. What they thought was hidden became obvious. What once felt confusing became clear. What you once excused revealed intent. Narcissists do not survive clarity. They require ambiguity to maintain power, and once ambiguity died, their control suffocated. This is where divine discernment takes over, not suspicion, not paranoia, revelation. God began showing you what your spirit had sensed all along. The inconsistencies, the emotional heaviness after conversations, the subtle contempt masked as concern, the energy shift when your presence interrupted their agenda. Discernment did not come loudly, it came precisely, and once God showed you the truth, you could never unsee it. Their words lost power, their guilt lost grip, their manipulation lost effect. They felt it before you spoke it. That is when God initiated removal. Divine removal is not gentle, it is intentional. God does not remove you to confuse you. He removes you to free you. He severed soul ties disguised as loyalty. He broke people-pleasing spirits mistaken for love. He dismantled emotional bondage, mistaken for commitment. What the narcissist called connection was control. What they called chemistry was dependence. What they called loyalty was your compassion being exploited. And when God broke that bond, everything shifted. You entered isolation, not emptiness, but holy restoration. Silence became healing. Distance became detox. Solitude became sanctuary. Meanwhile, on the other side of the separation, the narcissist unraveled. They lost their supply, their cover, their shield, their justification. They scrambled to replace what you provided, only to discover the chaos followed them. The disorder they blamed on you surfaced everywhere else. That is when the lesson landed. Your absence became instruction. They realized you were never the problem. You were the stabilizer. And now without you, the truth confronted them relentlessly. Your removal became judgment. Not loud, not public, but irreversible. And your life, it began to rise. God promoted you quietly, restored you deeply, protected you fully. You stepped into relationships marked by honor, spaces marked by alignment, peace that did not require explanation. And from a distance they watched God defend you, watched doors open, watched you flourish without their approval. That is the judgment they cannot escape. They lost access permanently, and you gained alignment eternally. This was never about losing them. It was about God reclaiming you, and that is where this chapter truly ends.
And God's final word is never rushed. It is never careless. It is never weak. When God speaks last, he speaks with permanence. This is the part of the journey where many people expect fireworks, public collapse, dramatic apologies, visible regret. But that is not how God finishes chapters like this. God closes doors so quietly that only the spiritually awake realize they are sealed forever. And the narcissist feels it before they understand it. Because what terrifies them most is not punishment, it is irrelevance. They wake up one day and realize they no longer occupy space in your emotional world. Your decisions no longer orbit their reactions. Your peace no longer requires their approval. Your silence is no longer waiting, it is settled. And that is when something inside them fractures. You see, narcissistic control depends on emotional access. As long as they can trigger you, confuse you, guilt you, or provoke you, they feel alive. But when God removes you, that access is revoked, and suddenly they are left alone with the one thing they spent their entire life avoiding themselves. Your absence becomes a mirror they cannot shatter. They replay conversations, moments, missed chances, not because they miss you the way you loved them, but because they miss what you provided, the stability, the grounding, the emotional regulation, the cover, the excuse, the buffer between them and accountability. And now that buffer is gone, this is where the judgment deepens, because they begin to realize something unsettling. The chaos did not start when you left. It was always there, you were just absorbing it. The relationships that follow you fall apart faster. The same conflicts repeat with different faces. The same complaints resurface in new environments. And slowly, painfully, the pattern exposes itself. You were never the problem.
You were the restraint. This realization does not soften them, it hardens them or breaks them, and which one happens depends entirely on what they choose to do with the truth. But either way, your role is finished, because God does not keep his servants in classrooms where the lesson has already been taught. When God finishes a chapter, he removes the desire to return. One of the most misunderstood parts of divine healing is this: God does not just remove people, he removes the hunger for what harmed you. At first, you may miss them, not because they were good for you, but because trauma bonds mimic intimacy. Familiar pain feels safer than unfamiliar peace. But as God continues his work, something shifts. You stop romanticizing the past. You stop rehearsing explanations you'll never give. You stop hoping they'll finally understand. And that is when you know the healing has reached your spirit, not just your emotions. Because when God is truly done, you don't need closure from the person who hurt you. You receive closure from clarity. You finally see the relationship for what it was, not what you hoped it could become. And that vision rewrites everything. You realize how much energy you spent managing someone else's emotions, how often you silenced yourself to keep peace, how many red flags you reframed as compassion. And instead of shame, something else rises: grief. Not grief for them, but grief for yourself, for how long you stayed, for how much you endured, for how deeply you believed love meant suffering. And God meets you there, not with condemnation, but with restoration. Restoration is not returning you to who you were. God does not heal you by making you the person you were before the pain. He heals you by making you wiser, clearer, and more anchored than you've ever been. You don't lose your kindness, but you gain discernment. You don't lose your compassion, but you gain boundaries. You don't lose your faith, but you gain authority. And this is where your promotion begins to manifest. You stop over-explaining. You stop over-giving. You stop over-functioning. You begin choosing peace without guilt, rest without justification, distance without apology. And people notice, not because you announce it, but because your presence changes. You no longer enter rooms scanning for emotional danger. You no longer brace yourself for backlash. You no longer shrink to maintain connection. You take up space calmly, quietly, securely, and this is deeply uncomfortable for people who benefited from your insecurity. The narcissist's final realization. At some point, usually when it's too late, the narcissist realizes they miscalculated. They assumed your grace was endless. They assumed your loyalty meant tolerance. They assumed your silence meant compliance. They never imagined God would side with you by removing you, and that realization lands heavy, because there is no way to spin it, no narrative where they are the hero, no version where they were misunderstood, no angle where they were wronged. Your peace dismantles every lie they told about you. Your growth contradicts their accusations. Your stability exposes their instability. Your joy reveals their emptiness. And the most painful truth of all, they cannot follow you where God is taking you, because access to your next season requires humility, accountability, and transformation, things they refused to cultivate when it mattered. Why God had to remove you completely. Some people ask, why did God have to remove me so fully? Why couldn't there be distance instead of separation? Because partial access invites regression. As long as the door remains cracked, manipulation finds a way back in. As long as communication remains open, confusion returns. God does not heal halfway. He amputates what is killing you. And yes, amputation hurts, but infection kills. God chose your life over your comfort. He chose your future over your familiarity. He chose your assignment over their convenience. And that choice marks you. From this point forward, you will recognize manipulation faster. You will feel spiritual misalignment sooner. You will no longer confuse intensity with intimacy or control with care. Your discernment becomes sharp, not cynical. Your boundaries become firm, not cruel. Your standards rise, not out of pride, but out of wisdom. The quiet power of being unreachable. There is a holy power in being unreachable to people who once had full access to you. Not blocked in bitterness, not distant in resentment, but unavailable in peace. Your spirit is no longer open to negotiation. You don't argue your worth. You don't explain your boundaries. You don't chase understanding from those committed to misunderstanding you. And that silence speaks louder than confrontation ever could, because it says, I see clearly now. I choose myself. I trust God more than I fear your reaction. And heaven responds to that trust. The new assignments God releases after separation. Once God removes you, He doesn't leave the space empty. He fills it with alignment, with safety, with purpose. You begin encountering people who do not require self-abandonment to love you. Conversations feel mutual.
Respect feels natural, effort feels shared, and slowly your nervous system learns something new. Peace can be normal. You don't have to earn love by suffering. You don't have to prove loyalty by enduring harm. You don't have to shrink to be chosen. God begins assigning you to spaces where your presence is valued, not exploited. And this is when you understand the full meaning of divine promotion. Promotion is not applause, it is alignment. It is being placed where you no longer have to betray yourself to belong. The final seal, when God removes the memory's power. The last stage of this journey is subtle but profound. One day, you realize you haven't thought about them. Not in anger, not in longing, not in analysis. They simply no longer occupy emotional real estate in your mind. The memories lose charge. The triggers lose intensity. The story loses control. And you don't feel victory. You feel peace. That is how God ends chapters for his children. Not with noise, but with rest. Not with revenge, but with release. Not with punishment, but with promotion. And if you are here, if this resonates, it is because you are standing at the threshold of that peace. You are not behind. You are not late. You are not broken. You are being repositioned. God is not dismantling your life. He is disentangling you from what could not go with you. And when you finally step fully into the season ahead, one truth will anchor you forever. God did not remove you to hurt them. He removed you to heal you. And in doing so, he revealed who was never meant to walk beside you in the future. He prepared.
The heartbreak they tried to disguise was never sudden. Listen closely to this message without blinking, without softening the edges, without excusing what happened. Your pain was not an accident. Your breakup was not a fleeting mistake. The sorrow you carry was years in the making, a slow, secret erosion of what you thought was sacred. Most people believe betrayal strikes like a lightning bolt fast, shocking, unpredictable. But true, soul-shattering betrayal, it doesn't begin overnight. It starts long before footsteps walk out the door. It begins when hearts drift silently away. It begins when someone stops choosing truth and starts flirting with temptation. It begins when a hand once held in devotion begins to see you as a burden instead of a blessing. The narcissist didn't wake up one morning and decide to leave. No, they had been leaving while you prayed for their presence, while you sought reconciliation, while you leaned into God for guidance. While you were repairing, they were plotting. While you were faithful, they were fleeing. And the cruelest part, they wanted you to believe it was your fault, that the rupture, the chaos, the emptiness was yours to bear. Deception always works this way. It blames the innocent to free the guilty. It twists the narrative so that the betrayer walks away seemingly righteous. But God saw, God heard, God remembers. He witnessed them detach while pretending everything was fine. He saw the secret messages, the hidden alliances, the coldness disguised as stress, the distance dressed as exhaustion. He watched their heart leave long before their body followed. And here is where the revelation begins. Because once you see that the betrayal didn't start when they left, you understand the story began much earlier, the moment they carried the love meant for you to another. Your loyalty, your prayers, your patience, your devotion, they transferred it all to someone who could never honor it. The Bible compares the heart to a cup, a vessel designed to overflow with God's blessings, truth, and love. But the narcissist took your cup and poured it into a vessel unfit to hold it. They gave your sacrifices to someone who saw them as fuel for ego, amusement, or advantage. They replaced covenant with convenience, depth with dopamine, God-given intimacy with lust-driven fantasy. And here is the eternal truth. What is stolen outside of God's design cannot last. What is birthed in deception collapses under its own weight. Heaven does not bless what originates in lies. Your cup, your sacred love, was never theirs to squander, and the universe never overlooks such violations. What they called love was never love. It was lust in disguise. It was illusion, temporary and hollow. They mistook excitement for intimacy, freedom for bondage, escape for salvation. And as the deception crumbled, as the fantasy burned away, emptiness consumed them, thrill faded, attention waned, the illusion shattered, and suddenly they realized nothing they chased could fill the void inside. But the devastation didn't stop there. They didn't just lose you. They lost family, credibility, influence, allies. Every voice that once shielded them went silent. One by one, the pillars of their life abandoned them. Sin numbs, pride deceives, arrogance whispers lies, but truth always arrives. And when it does, those who once excused the behavior see the person behind the mask, manipulator, betrayer, deceiver, and the silence that follows is not calm, it is divine, it is the sound of consequence, it is the echo of heaven withdrawing protection. Their reputation collapses, their relationships falter, their foundations crumble, the new supply, the one they thought would anchor them, leaves. And in that moment, the narcissist finally confronts what they dismissed for so long. They lost the one who loved them truly, you, the one who loved without agenda, without manipulation, without using wounds as currency, the one whose compassion, patience and prayers were genuine, the one who offered truth while the world offered convenience. And now, in the ruins of their choices, your memory rises before them like a ghost, a haunting reminder of the sacred love they destroyed. This is when desperation begins, not repentance, not transformation, desperation. They attempt to draw you back with false remorse, emotional manipulation, and spiritual tricks. They may whisper, "God told me you're my person," hoping your compassion, discernment, and heart will bend. But understand this, they are not seeking restoration, they are seeking refuge, not covenant. They seek comfort, not accountability. They seek escape. And you are not their refuge. You are not their second chance. You are not the emergency they run back to when all else fails. God did not bring you through fire to return to smoke. He did not open your eyes so you could step back into blindness. He did not restore your heart so it could be given again to the one who shattered it. Because while they chased illusion, God rebuilt you. While they sought lust, God strengthened you. While they dismantled connection, God reconstructed your identity. You are wiser, stronger, spiritually grounded, covered by grace, armed with discernment. You are no longer the version of yourself they could manipulate. You are a temple, not a rest stop. Your love is a gift, not a lifeline for broken manipulators. Your restoration is proof. Betrayal cannot destroy what heaven intends to bless. Divine justice always completes its work. And now, for the first time, the story shifts entirely to you. Because now, for the first time, the story shifts entirely to you. God's attention, which once lingered on the one who chose deception, now rests fully on the one who endured, on the one who prayed when they mocked, on the one who gave when they schemed, on the one whose heart remained loyal when the world offered only abandonment. And in this sacred shift you begin to see the truth. You were never meant to be a shadow in someone else's life. You were never created to fill gaps left by their immaturity, or to absorb the consequences of their selfishness. Your heart was not a playground for brokenness disguised as charm. Your love was not a bargaining chip for manipulation, and your spirit was never intended to be the stopgap for someone who refused God's guidance. There is power in understanding this truth, a divine liberation that reshapes not just your perception of the past but the entire trajectory of your future. Because once you see that you were never their backup plan, you begin to reclaim your sacred authority. Let me tell you something the enemy wants you to miss. Every tear you shed, every prayer you whispered, every night spent crying in the quiet, God was collecting. He was storing the fidelity of your soul like gold in the heavens. And now, as the weight of your endurance becomes evident, the universe is aligning to show you that you were not diminished by betrayal. You were being prepared. You were being tempered like fine steel. You were being positioned for a divine elevation that no person, no deception, no heartbreak could ever take away. The narcissist may have believed they were in control. They may have thought they could manipulate the story, bend reality, and rewrite history. But God operates outside of their limited imagination. Heaven never loses track of what is sacred. The love you offered, the prayers, the forgiveness, the faithfulness, was never wasted. Every act of patience and devotion was a seed planted in the soil of eternity, waiting for the day it would bear witness to your restoration and their exposure. And now, as the narcissist stumbles, as the consequences they once ignored arrive with precision, your clarity becomes undeniable. You can see the architecture of their deception. You can see the hollowness of the connections they sought. You can see the pattern, every lie, every betrayal, every half-truth leading to the inevitable collapse. And the beauty of this revelation is that it does not come with anger. Though anger may flare, it comes with freedom. Freedom to no longer be entangled in their chaos, to no longer be defined by their choices, and to step fully into the divine purpose that was always yours. Because make no mistake, the collapse of the narcissist's life is not a random series of unfortunate events. It is divine correction. It is the unfolding of a God-ordained sequence in which truth prevails, deception is exposed, and righteousness is elevated. And the more they scramble to reclaim what they cannot have, the clearer it becomes. God's plan was never to let them have you. You were never theirs to command, to manipulate, or to consume.
Your love was never theirs to corrupt, and now in the silence of their unraveling, the truth is loud. They will try to rewrite their story. They will try to spin narratives, cast blame, and seek sympathy. But the story God is telling is immutable. It is written in eternity, backed by divine authority, and immune to human manipulation. They can attempt to project guilt, but you will no longer carry it. They can whisper, charm, and manipulate, but your spirit is now anchored in discernment. They can approach, but your heart is now fortified by grace. You are no longer accessible to the tactics that once ensnared you, and here is a crucial revelation. Their return is never about love. Their return is always about need, about scarcity, about the panic that arises when they finally see the consequences of what they did. They return seeking comfort, not covenant. They return craving validation, not truth. They return as seekers of relief, not seekers of God. And you, the one who has been restored, who has been tempered, who has been elevated, are not responsible for being their outlet. You are not the space where they unload the chaos they created. You are not the emergency exit for someone who refuses to carry their own weight. Your restoration, your discernment, your boundaries, these are the marks of God's work in you, and every attempt they make to pull you back, every emotional manipulation they try, is only a testament to the transformation they cannot reverse. The person they once thought could be controlled, softened, or coerced is now untouchable in spirit, anchored in God, and aware of their deception. Your boundaries are no longer negotiable, because they are backed by divine authority, and this is where many fail to understand. God does not call you to return to what broke you. He does not require you to reconcile with the one who rejected holiness in favor of lust, deception, or self-serving gain. Your calling is not to rescue the unrepentant, to rebuild what was never yours to fix, or to step back into the smoke after being refined by fire. Your calling is to embrace your restoration fully, to walk boldly into the life God designed for you, and to let the one who betrayed confront the consequences of their own actions. Because the truth is this, their destruction is not your responsibility, but their exposure is inevitable. The life they built on lies, the connections they nurtured through deceit, the illusions they chased instead of God, they will all crumble. And every collapse, every disappointment, every moment of realization is a confirmation of God's justice and a reminder that what belongs to you cannot be stolen, what is sacred cannot be profaned, and what is divinely designed cannot be bypassed by human cunning. The narcissist may have thought they could outwit God, but heaven sees all. They may have thought they could manipulate perception, but divine truth always prevails. They may have thought they were untouchable, but the consequences of betrayal are precise, relentless, and inevitable. And the more they attempt to regain control, the more evident it becomes that they have lost everything that truly mattered. Their reputation, their credibility, their relationships, and the very love they took for granted, all slipping through their fingers like sand. And you, on the other hand, stand as the living proof of divine restoration. You are not diminished by betrayal, you are elevated by endurance. You are not defined by their deception, you are defined by God's truth. You are not broken because they failed you, you are refined because God prepared you. And in this moment of clarity, the path before you is unmistakable. No longer a victim, no longer a backup plan, no longer a pawn in someone else's story. You are the author of your own destiny, guided by divine wisdom, protected by grace, and anchored in spiritual authority. Your presence is no longer a space for manipulation, it is a sanctuary for your soul. Your love is no longer a lifeline for someone else's chaos. It is a gift, sacred and untouchable, reserved for those who honor what God has placed within you. Your heart is no longer a resting place for the unrepentant. It is a temple, fortified, sanctified, and untouchable. And as you step fully into this understanding, a profound shift occurs. The chains of manipulation lose their grip. The echoes of betrayal begin to fade. The shadows of past pain begin to recede. And in their place rises clarity, empowerment, and divine peace. Because when heaven shifts its focus, when God redirects the narrative, what was once a story of loss becomes a testimony of triumph. What was once a trial of endurance becomes a proclamation of victory. What was once a battlefield of deception becomes a sanctuary of truth. And here is the final, unshakable truth. You were never meant to be anyone's second choice. You were never meant to fill the gaps left by their failures. You were never meant to be a fallback for someone who could not honor God's design for love. Your worth, your purpose, your destiny, all of it existed long before they ever mishandled you. And now, as the one who betrayed faces the collapse of all they chased, you rise untouched, untangled, and unshakable in the identity God gave you. Because the truth they will never understand is this: while they pursued illusion, God was pursuing you. While they chased chaos, God was establishing order in your spirit. While they surrendered to sin, God was restoring holiness in your soul. And now, standing fully restored, fully empowered, and fully covered, you embody a living declaration. Betrayal cannot destroy what heaven intends to bless. Deception cannot steal what God has ordained. And the love that is truly yours will never be lost, never be corrupted, and never be profaned. So write it boldly in your spirit, declare it in your voice, and hold it without compromise. I am not anyone's backup plan. I am not a refuge for the unrepentant. I am not defined by the betrayal of others. I am divinely restored, divinely protected, and divinely empowered. I am the living proof that God redeems the broken, strengthens the weary, and raises the faithful. My love, my heart, my soul are sacred, and I will not hand them back to anyone who cannot honor what God has placed within me. And now, with this truth anchoring your heart, you walk forward into your life with courage, clarity, and conviction. You are no longer reacting to the chaos they created. You are no longer tied to the outcomes of their poor choices. You are no longer defined by their inability to honor God. You are free, fully free, spiritually grounded, emotionally whole, and spiritually untouchable. Because the final unyielding truth is this: God never raised his children to be anyone's backup. He never intended for your faithfulness to be exploited, your devotion to be corrupted, or your love to be misused. You were created to flourish, to rise, to shine, and to walk in the fullness of the blessings he prepared for you. And when the narcissist realizes too late what they lost, when every false alliance collapses, when the new supply disappears, when silence replaces admiration, then and only then do they face the weight of the choices that could never ever be undone. And you are already home, already whole, already free, already victorious, already covered, already restored, already walking in the destiny that was always yours.